Hi, Gwilym. How are you, mate?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. A little bit cold today. Seem to have been the temperature seemed to be heading in the right direction at the start of the week, but not now.
No, you just thrown me completely, by the way.
Why?
Well, because before we record, we always go 3, 2, 1 mark to
Yeah.
synchronize everybody. We all know this. Just as you say, good. You just asked if you go 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2. Have you ever launched a rocket? You don't go 1, 2, 3 because no one knows what number you're going to launch on. We launch on 10 or 11, 10 or 11. You go down, people know where you are. It's 3, 2, 1, not 1, 2, 3.
You're very triggered. You okay? You okay, mate?
One thing makes you cross. It's thinking in the wrong direction. You know that.
You had a tough week. Do you want to talk about it?
It's quite exciting doing on the Friday afternoon, actually, isn't it?
I don't think we've done one on a Friday afternoon before, have we?
No.
Yeah. I've probably never seen you on a Friday afternoon. So is this what you're normally like?
But yeah. But there's listeners thinking what's going on. Just at my desk.
I'm chilling towards the weekend, and you're hyper.
I've just had a coffee. It was a bad idea.
I've not yet started the beer. I thought I'd leave it until after the podcast.
Why?
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property, brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
Oh, do we plug, by the way, the fact we've got a live podcast coming up? Sure or not?
Yeah, so we are disappearing into a pub, me and you, on the 10th of March. We're recording five podcasts in an afternoon. They'll be distributed evenly after the 10th of March. So that means we get a month off then of recording podcasts. So that's great.
No, it is quite effective. Are we going to tell people where it is, or is that dangerous?
I could tell people where it is if I could remember.
Oh, okay.
So you should have prompted me that question was coming.
Sorry, I just thought of it. What I didn't realise is that we've got a £750 minimum spend, so we need about 100 people to come and buy a pint. Basically, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we got one very excellent.
It's the Lamb pub in London.
A lamb.
And apparently we're doing 4 podcasts and not 5. It's always nice when you've got someone in the background who knows what they're talking about.
I thought it was okay. Good, excellent.
But actually, we've got 2 people here who know what they're talking about. And I'm not talking about you and me. I'm talking about our guests. Shall we get the guests on? Shall we do that now? Who wants to go first? Kirsteen, do you want to go first? Do you want to introduce yourself to the world?
Sure thing. Hi, I'm Kirsteen Beverloo. And sorry, I got married recently, so that's why there's the stumble over the change of name. So Kirsteen Beverloo, and I am IP and Product Legal Counsel at Elvie. So I have the fun responsibility of looking after the IP portfolio. We're a Femtech company, make lots of great innovative products that improve women's lives. And I work with the product team all the way from inception of new ideas through to launch to market, and then looking after the products once they're in market as well. So lots of keeping out of trouble.
Welcome to the podcast. We're really excited to have you on. I've been really looking forward to this one. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Emily Collins. I'm a patent attorney, UK and European, and I'm a partner at Kilburn Strode. I've got a physics background, so work on kind of anything tech, and also a passion for femtech and kind of gender disparity and innovation and all things diversity inclusion.
Oh, it's really good to have you on as well. So thank you for coming.
Very excited to be here.
I'm really hoping that Gwilym's going to do most of the hard work on this one, because as regular listeners know, he usually gets an easy ride.
No, well, if anyone's listened to us for 5 minutes, they know what happens. You say, tell us about Elvie, and then you say, over to you, Gwilym. I know what's coming.
That's not going to be my first question.
Oh, okay.
I had never heard of the phrase Femtech until it appeared in the email chain that we started discussing this. So before we find out all about Elvie, I'd like to know what Femtech is.
Well, the phrase Femtech was actually coined by Ida Tin, who is the founder of the app Clue. So she was kind of the first and trailblazer in the femtech industry, but it's basically all about women's health and using technology to improve women's lives. And so it's sort of probably in the past 10 years, it's really come to the fore, and making sure that women now get the products that they need to solve the problems in their lives.
I mean, living a life surrounded by women at home, I now feel really ignorant. And I should have known this. I probably should have asked the 2 girls. They would have told me.
Yeah, I wrote an article on this a couple of years ago, and in preparation this morning for this podcast, I was kind of rereading it to remind myself, all about Femtech. And I think I must have been feeling kind of quite either bolshy or put upon when I wrote this article, because I included the line, it's important to remember that Femtech isn't limited to reproductive matters because women are not simply reproductive machines. I think I must have, I don't know what I was going through at that time. But yeah, it's kind of all things reproductive, like maternal, but also kind of, health in general, disease monitoring, well-being, mental health, longevity, anything to do with health, well-being, specifically for women.
Oh, don't worry. Gwilym and I don't see you as simply reproductive. We might have reached our first editing out point, Gwilym. I don't know.
Holy. Before we dive any further, actually, Emily, I remember you. I have the honour and pleasure and joy of being a partner of Emily's at Kilburn Strode. I've been reading all your stuff for a long time now and love it. You keep coming up with these fascinating little nuggets about why you need Femtech. And I remember there was one about the fact that your smartwatches that measure your gait don't work for mums pushing push chairs or something. So all these things designed by blokes that thinking very hard are a catastrophe. What was that all about?
Yeah, so it won't, kind of, because if you're pushing a pram, your wrist is a bit more stable than if you're a man taking a step, so it kind of doesn't take that into account. Yeah, there's just lots of interesting things about kind of the data gap, and all these studies, are done on men. Seatbelts are made to fit men. All the medical testing until 1993, women weren't allowed to be included in medical testing. So all the things we knew about diseases were all based on men. So there's just this whole world, and it's super interesting and changing really rapidly, which is obviously very exciting.
Am I making this up, or do I remember that until fairly recently, crash test dummies were exclusively male?
Yeah. And still not every car company uses female crash test dummies, I don't think, at least not a couple of years ago. And why it's like super interesting to Femtech in particular is because there's all these kind of research shows that, women, typically in households, women are the ones who make the health related purchases. They're the ones who are more likely to make the decision on which healthcare the household is going to have. And so if obviously Femtech is 50% of the population, so it automatically is of use to 50% of the population, but then even more so because they're the one who decide where to spend the money. So there's this huge kind of market potential, which is why we're seeing it grow so rapidly.
And when you were talking about the pram pushing thing, or when you and Gwilym were talking about it, the thing I immediately thought of was I noticed that years ago when I used to push supermarket trolleys. Whenever I pushed a supermarket trolley, smartwatch of choice then, which I won't say what it was because we're probably not allowed to kind of name drop our Gwilym, used to think I was cycling. And it must.
When I drive, my smartwatch thinks I'm walking. It's awesome. So you get 10,000.
How fast do you normally walk?
Well, no, it just counts as the vibration. So I just get out of the car having done nothing all day, and I've done 15,000 steps. Brilliant. But for the record, I do also push a pushchair around quite a lot at the moment.
You do.
And I'm not getting any credit, so I guess it balances.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah, because you're an elderly father, aren't you?
Thank you so much. Couldn't have put it more elegantly myself.
Kirsteen, do you want to kick us off? Well, we've kicked off, haven't we, already? But, you want to sort of tell us a wee bit about the Elvie story and where all that originated from? And
Sure thing. So yeah, the reason that Femtech has really come to the fore, and a lot of people think it is around menstruation and things related to a woman's monthly cycle, is because a lot of the areas that the Femtech companies are tackling are taboo subjects, and women's bodies can be objectified, but no one wants to talk about how they actually work. And I think that's something. So our founder, Tanya Bowler, she's always been heavily involved in women's health. She had a leadership position at the United Nations and worked with various charity organizations across Africa and Asia, specializing in sexual health and AIDS prevention. But it was really when she first became pregnant that she kind of began to realize the disparity in terms of, we have these amazing smartphones in our pockets, but the technology that was available to women to help them through these really challenging times was, very much back in the dark ages. So she kind of, I think, was pelvic floor care. It's something that's not really talked about until women do become pregnant. By the way, men have a pelvic floor as well. It's just talking about the hammock of muscles that keep your inner organs from falling out of your pelvis. And yeah, it was the help that was available at the time was all about, you had to go to your doctor, you had to have quite invasive procedure to go about strengthening your pelvic floor. And she was like, surely you could do this at home just with the support of technology. So that kind of led to the development of Elvie Trainer, which is a pelvic floor training device. It's essentially gamification of Kegels. So you've got a game on your app and it lets you visualize biofeedback that you get from the device that's inserted in your vagina. So as you squeeze and lift, you can see the icon on the screen lifting and you know that you're doing it correctly, because up to a third of women actually bear down when they do their pelvic floor exercises. And so that's actually making the problem worse and not helping. So that biofeedback is really important in terms of making sure it's helping, not hindering women. But obviously you've got a great idea. How do you actually get it to market? And I think just being a women's health issue, talking about vaginas in investor pitches to, let's face it, predominantly male investors, she got a lot of doors closed in her face, or just no, not for us. But fortunately, there were people that took a chance on us, and that, you know, Elvie Trainers had great success, and it's also let us then build on that, and we've had great success with further products in the breastfeeding category. So our sort of flagship Elvie Pump, again, it was about thinking about where are the pain points for women in their lives and how can we make it better. So we have a real user-led design approach. We go to women, we talk to them, we do lots of research. We say, you know, for this category, what are the pain points? How could it be better? And the feedback from women in terms of breastfeeding is, well, breastfeeding is this amazing opportunity to feed your child with your body, but for many reasons it doesn't work for women. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at the US with the minimal maternity policies, like pumping is very much part of the culture there. But the pumps that were available sort of in the mid 2010s, you're kind of plugged into the wall. They're very noisy. They're not discreet. You have bottles hanging out your bra. It's not a very pleasant, you know, experience for a woman in such a, you know, can be such a fragile time when there's so many new things going on. And so that's why it was like, no, women don't want to feel like cows. They want to have something that's discreet, that's beautiful, that they can wear and, you know, could be pumping and, you know, be recording a podcast because it's so quiet, it's discreet. You don't know that other people don't know that you're wearing it. So that's kind of the evolution of Elvie as an ethos in terms of design, and also, you know, that's the ethos that we have going forward still in terms of the new products that we start to look at.
I'm now really worried that Lee is doing his pelvic floor exercises during this podcast.
I'm just terrified about all my organs falling through my pelvic floor. I've got a new thing to worry about now.
So the product story is fantastic, and obviously, you know, you're a live company and you've got all kinds of things going on, but hopefully the IP story has been good for you as well.
Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution. I think with, you know, IP is not cheap. And I think that's something that's difficult for startup companies at the beginning. But it's obviously so important to, if you have that new innovative idea, to get advice on IP, be able to protect your idea at the beginning. And then it's about using your IP can also really help during investment as well. So certainly for us, we were able to we filed patents and trademarks and designs around Elvie Trainer at the beginning, and then that kind of reassures investors in terms of getting further investment. And sometimes, you know, patents take a while to grant, but just having those filings at the early stages does give confidence to the investors. As you then go through the further rounds, sort of Series C, D, you know, they will start to have a slightly closer look at the validity story, at the potential challenges, you know, from competitors and patent offices, and they're often quite interesting discussions. The investors will bring their legal counsel in as well. But we raised just nearly $100 million with our Series C fundraising at the end of last year, which was a great success. And there were some challenging discussions, but it's been great to tell that story through our IP. But now we're at a really interesting stage where our IP is getting granted. We're beginning to see competition in the market. Do we now use our IP to defend our position? We get challenges from other people as well, and it's just about using that. So there's a lot to keep me busy for sure.
Should I carry on? Sorry, Lee.
Yeah, no, carry on, mate.
He's looking at me. Normally Lee's jumping all over this, but he did mean it. Years ago, I actually worked in it wasn't called Femtech then. It certainly wasn't based around Femtech, but it was a client I won't name a while ago that we moved on. But it's a very crowded field actually. So what's interesting is that there's always been a lot of innovation around this whole area, but what you guys bring in on top of that is actually some kind of rather more sensible design considerations as well.
Yeah, we have so as I mentioned, we've got that kind of user-led design focus. So it's we'll get the input from them, but we get to work with great patent attorneys like Emily and her team. So when we come up with the original ideas, we'll get filings then, but then it's about thinking about how you keep topping that up throughout the life cycle of the product development process. And we'll kind of do different gate reviews to assess at different points throughout the development of the product. And then, as I said, we also we don't just look at patenting the products. It's also about thinking about the exterior design. We have a very sleek kind of design view at Elvie, and that we want to translate that across all our products and make sure we protect that as well. It's one of our USPs.
And I mean, as a fellow patent attorney, Emily, I know that sometimes it's difficult to get totally passionate about every piece of work that we do. Really, this was the dream come true doing this.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. How cool is it to be able to get up in the morning and like work with something that is like super interesting and that it's going to help people. And also, I mean, Kirsteen and I have a great time working together, but also like the legal challenges it's always changing, it's always different, and it's great to work with a company of the size where that IP really does matter and that every case matters. It's different for working with companies of all different sizes, but with a company at that size where the patents matter in a technology that you kind of like, even just talking about it now, I'm kind of just like smiling because it's so interesting. Like it just doesn't get any better for a patent attorney. Like how lucky are we that we have this profession, that we can do stuff that's interesting and causing good in the world and intellectually challenging. It's fabulous. I feel very lucky.
Can I dive in now, Gwilym? Is that all right?
Get in.
Cool. It's just that we've got Kirsteen and Emily talking together now, and I want to sort of grab that moment, if that's okay. Kirsteen and Emily, first of all, Kirsteen, how did you decide that you needed external support around IP? So you needed to hook up with a firm of patent attorneys, and why did it end up being K&S, if that's a story that's able to be told? And then from Emily's perspective, you said a little bit there about how it feels like working with people at Elvie. Maybe if the two of you could just talk a little bit about the relationship and how it works, and what the kind of benefits of working together are.
Sure. So Elvie has always worked with different patent advisors. So in the early stages before I came on board, I guess it was more discrete pieces of work. Before Kilburn Strode, we worked with another firm who had been with us for a good year or two, and were great for the type of strategic advice that we needed at that point in terms of fundraising and sort of building the portfolio on a budget at that point. But it was really clear that end of 2001, the scale of development and the way that we wanted to operate was changing at a rate of knots, and so we really just needed to kind of expand our bandwidth, and that's where that kind of prompted the move. We did speak to a number of different firms, as you'd expect. But Emily with her kind of growing Femtech practice, and just there was something about the culture with Kilburn Strode that just really fit with Elvie. There was no qualms about talking about boobs and vaginas, which is everyday occurrence at Elvie, and you just need to get past that. But it was, and just great connection with Emily and the rest of the team, and it's gone from strength to strength since then.
From my point of view, obviously it's great to work in an area that you are passionate about and interested in. It is interesting, kind of like, the team that works on Elvie, it's about 50% women, 50% men. And that's kind of great, to have both men and women working on the team and all providing different inputs. And with a company this size, the type of like legal is, you really get to know the products and exactly why each patent matters. And you get to know all of the prior art that's always cited, and it's just fun to be like, oh, that document's come up again, or oh yeah, that that very small thing about a valve over here, to know the full range, which is quite a big range. There's lots of meaty, juicy stuff there, but also it's not kind of a massive portfolio that you never really know why each patent's important. It's just good to have a story in your mind when you're working on these pieces, and it's a great experience for the team as well, being able to be involved in different types of strategic legal advice, rather than often when you are a patent attorney kind of maybe at one of the bigger firms, you just do a lot of office actions, which is good experience as well. But being able to see the broad range of legal issues we do, it's from FTOs to kind of infringement advice to prosecution and drafting, it doesn't get much better, really. And it's great, and we're based down the road from each other, so we're able to see a lot of each other kind of in person, and then we'll go and visit engineers in Bristol for meetings. So it's good to have that kind of location advantage as well.
Before I hand back to Gwilym, Can I just ask one more question, and we can cut this one out if it doesn't work? I'm sitting here thinking about it, so I'm going to ask it. Okay, the prior art must be fascinating. Does it cross species?
Yes, it can. So yeah, a lot of the original breast pump technology kind of was inspired by cow milking machines, and obviously that all gets cited and brought up. So it's definitely quite interesting. As I said, Elvie's very much about not making women feel like cows.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's really an argument that a patent office examiner would listen to. I don't think that's a sufficient difference from a technical perspective. But yeah, that's something that does pop up, and it is interesting to see.
Yeah, in that article that I mentioned that I wrote, there was a bit of a scathing review of like the first patent for a breast pump about how basically, why did humans use their innovation, and why did they start on milking cattle when kind of like the problem of women's breastfeeding has been around for millennia, but they first turned the innovation to milking cattle, and then kind of, I don't know, and then I did a review of like a more modern breast pump, and I was saying, well, one of the benefits about this is it recognizes the difference between women and cattle. I think at that point in my life, maybe in my late 20s, I don't know, I think I have some kind of chip on my shoulder, but that is what I do love about modern breast pumps, that they do recognize the difference between women and cattle.
I'm so glad I asked the question, and we've now got the strapline for the podcast.
I think you're also relieved, Lee, because you got away with that. No, I was actually going to just mention one other thing. Actually, one of the most exciting things for a patent attorney, in my experience, is to actually see a product you worked on in the real world. Having done a lot of mobile phones, a lot of the stuff I do is hidden away in some god awful protocol. Some you'll never see again. I think stuff on the shelves is so cool, isn't it?
Yeah, something I really like is having all of the products kind of lined up on my desk, and when you're thinking about a claim or something, you can get it up, you can take the top off and you can look at it. Yeah, when I kind of went home at Christmas to kind of stay with my mum, and I was doing something, sort of opinion of Elvie had a desk full 5 different breast pumps next to each other, and I don't know what she thought I was kind of up to, but it's so good to be able to hold it and look at it and and see that.
I've got a product on the side of a bus at the moment. I've never seen that before. That's really cool. There you go. There's a challenge for you, Kirsteen. Let's get these on buses. That's what we need.
Well, we've had them on the London catwalk. That was how we launched Elvie Pump.
Oh wow!
So that was a great stroke by our marketing team. So yes, about a bus, we can definitely aim for that as well.
That is so cool. So just broadening it out a little bit, if I may, to kind of the world of femtech patenting more widely. Emily, as you mentioned, there's been all kinds of bizarre misconceptions, but have you got any good examples of some femtech patents out there that might catch the listener's attention?
Yeah, I kind of like a bit of a kind of like a then and now. Like patents are a really good way of kind of capturing innovation at a point in time, so you can kind of look back at them. It's like looking at archives of newspaper. You can kind of have a good lens into what things were. So kind of tampons, the first patent for tampon was filed in 1931 by a man, obviously, but then kind of like, so yeah, there was a patent issued for that 90 odd years ago, and like kind of to show how that's come along, there's been I think in 2018 there was a Bluetooth tampon application filed where the tampon has like a Bluetooth thing, so you can a cell phone based tampon monitoring system, and there's kind of all this idea that you could link that up with an app, or you could even kind of use information from a Bluetooth tampon to learn more about disease monitoring such as endometriosis and that kind of thing. It's just really cool.
Yeah, that's what I love about the industry as well. It's empowering women by giving them the knowledge, by using the technology that we already have, and it's that intersection of kind of health, technology, science. Like that's what I really like, and all with tangible products, as you said.
You're moving into as you said before, there's a lot out there, and you're coming in, and I'm not a fan of the word disrupting, but I think it might apply. How's it going down with the competition? They may be loving it. I'm not sure.
Obviously, can't talk too closely to the competition, but yeah, they're definitely not too happy with us. Disruptive is a word that we sort of would have used initially, but we're now in a really interesting position where we're rights holders ourselves, and we're beginning to see competition. There's a huge move in the breast pump space to fully wearable, or at least wearable underclothes with a smaller pump that can go in your pocket or clipped on your belt, like our Elvie Stride product. And so that's really moving away from the more traditional, like plugged into the mains pumps. So the competition there is increasing. So it definitely shows we've moved the market we created a whole new market to start with, and then that's the direction of travel now. So it would be difficult to see a world where it would go back from that.
So it's kind of bittersweet. You know, your USP is fantastic, but so good that it's making everyone copy you. But that's good because you're doing a good thing. I don't know where I'd end up feeling about that.
Yeah, definitely. Then it's just about, initially it was great because we were, the first silent wearable breast pump. And now it's just about refocusing in terms of our USPs. Elvie Pump, it's the quietest, smallest and smartest breast pump on the market at the moment. But again, that's going to change as competitors want to move into that space as well. So that's what keeps us working. And we want to innovate our products. We recognize that there's further improvements we could give to women, and that's what we're working on as well.
I'd quite like to move us towards, if it's okay, the more kind of broader concept of women in inventorship, if that's okay, if we kind of stray into that for a little while. But before we do that, I just want to say one thing. I never thought that talking about intellectual property would be a way to also make it easier for men to talk about women's health. Because when Kirsteen first said the word vagina right at the start of the podcast, I thought, oh my God. Whereas now I'm quite happy to say it on this podcast. So that in itself is a revelation to me.
There's a rumor that Elvie interview process requires the applicant to say either vagina or breasts or something as part of it, and just there's a bit of a temperature test on comfort when talking about
Brilliant.
This. But I never experienced it, so I think it might be a bit of an urban legend.
I don't think I can probably introduce that at SEPA. I can't think of a way of getting that into the Kirsteen, if we stay with the Elvie story first, because I know that Emily's also got has been doing some research and got lots of thoughts around women in inventorship. How's the story worked to Elvie from a female founder through to the company as it looks now? Men have come in, women have come in. How's that seen the business develop in that sense?
Yeah, so I think, so company-wide, I think we are pretty evenly split, 50-50 sort of men and women. But what is really great about Elvie, and it's not by design, but just by hiring great people, that sort of 8 of our 10 senior executives are women. And like, for me, that's really inspiring to see women in leadership positions. And I think it inspires, inspires other designers or people in research team to go for those more senior roles. But then as at the design level, again, it comes back to that kind of 50-50 split, which, I think when you think about the numbers of women that are in sort of STEM education and careers, like, it's not too surprising that it's 50-50. In some places it would, be much more heavily geared towards men. So I think we're doing well. And we certainly have lots of women that input on the products and our design process. I did have a look at our sort of list of inventors, and actually pretty consistently all the way through our IP filings, we've had a fairly high number of women listed as named inventors. I think it's about 30% overall, which again doesn't sound like an awesome number, but actually when you compare it to some of the numbers, the statistics out there, I think WIPO published, 30% is looking pretty good. And it's quite interesting because when we have the conversations with the design team about inventorship, there is a bit of a cliche about women not really putting themselves forward. And we kind of have to have that conversation with them about, like, well, this is the test to be the inventor, and like this, what have you done? And we work through all of that. And I think it's an education piece with our design team as well.
Emily, do you want to tell us a little bit about, I know you've been doing a little bit of research, so do you want to tell us some of the whizzy things you found out, or not whizzy things as it turns out?
Yeah, you very kindly said that, Ellie, like, I believe Emily, like, she mentioned she's got something to say. I will try to limit myself, because no one wants kind of a 3-hour lecture by Emily on this podcast.
Are you as angry as you were when you wrote that article? Because it'd be fun.
It is, yeah. I could go on about this for a long time. I'll try.
Hey, we can have you back on. It's okay.
Okay. It'll need to be a 10-part series. I hope you're up for that. Yeah, no, it's like really interesting, kind of the gender divide in innovation and the disparity. And Elvie is kind of 30%. That is kind of amazing compared to, I mean, one stat I've got here is like 12.7% of named inventors are female. So obviously compared to that, Elvie is doing really, really well. And it is growing, but kind of if you plot out the kind of the current rate of growth, it'll take us until, I mean, it depends kind of which numbers you use. This one I've got is 2198 to reach kind of 50-50.
Humanity doesn't have that long.
Yeah, no. And obviously one of the huge reasons is that there are fewer women working in STEM roles than men. But it's not just that, because these figures are rough, and they're all ones from a couple of years ago. There might be more up-to-date ones, but there's about 23% of the kind of people who work in STEM are women. So women make up 20% of the STEM work, 23% of the STEM workforce, but only make up 12.8% of named inventors. So even of the people working in STEM, the women, we are less likely to capture their innovation, because there's no kind of inherent difference between men and women's innate ability to invent. Studies have shown that each gender is equally able to invent and innovate as each other. So there's something about women working in STEM that means we're not capturing that innovation. And if we think of all those like good ideas that like are there and are happening, but we're just not capturing it. There's this really good report that the USPTO, I think, issued, some part of the US government issued in 2018 called the Lost Einsteins report. And it found that if we captured innovation from women and minorities at the same rate as we did from white men, then the US innovation captured would quadruple. So that's like humanity survives on innovation. And so we just need to capture it. And so it's an interesting challenge to know how we best can capture it. And interesting, feel free to jump in and stop me at any point. Something else I found interesting was
go.
So if you break down those stats a bit more, so 12.8% of inventors are female. But if you look at it from kind of like the number of patent applications with at least one man named on it, 96% of applications name at least one man. So that's only 4%, I think it's actually 4.8% of patents name only women. And of that, it's 0.28% are on all female teams. So kind of like 19 out of 20 patent applications have at least one man named on it. So it shows that women, if they're going to be inventors, they're more likely to be in a team. And is that because, there might be reasons for that, like, say research students or maybe like groups of inventors, for flattery purposes or whatever, you might be more likely to name your supervisor or name kind of your boss as an inventor on the patent application, and those bosses are more likely to be men. So there's all these kind of reasons behind it, but it's really interesting. And obviously all of that kind of leads to the questions of what can we do? I was lucky enough, I'm surprised I've got this far without mentioning that I spent 3 years in California. I was lucky enough to do a 3-year secondment in Kilburn Strode, San Francisco office. I've got a liaison office out there. So I was out there and I was able to spend quite a lot of time talking to in-house counsel in the Bay Area, which was really useful. And I've spent a lot of it kind of asking what they do, but it's meant to be like the innovation capital of the world. Like how are they tackling this? Some of the things that in-house counsel could do be kind of to endorse prominent women and female inventors, have them give talks, show them off on the internet, that kind of thing. Make sure you actively seek out women and minority inventors. Ensure that that you have women and minority representation on patent committees. So kind of the people who make the decisions about whether or not to go forward with certain patents. And kind of some people have said that's difficult because you have to be fairly senior to be the ones to make the decisions about whether or not a company will patent something. But some companies you can have non-voting members. So invite women or minorities to be non-voting members on those committees to make it more approachable and inclusive, even if they don't get a vote. Blind review of IDFs, so take the names off so you can't see them. Obviously, promoting women to senior roles will help, and mentoring, maybe give people a woman or a mentor to help them through the patent process. So they're just a few ideas from kind of in-house counsel.
Is there something in the because you got me thinking, and I'm sat here thinking, is there something about the image of an inventor, what an inventor looks like? So let me give you two examples. The first is when I first came to CEPA, bearing in mind I don't come from an IP background. I joined CEPA 11 years ago. It was all very, very new to me. And very early on, I urged colleagues on council to stop using a term which was Fred in the shed. So every time we talked about the new lone inventor, it was Fred in the shed. And that to me just, well, one it sort of denigrates invention to being something that mad old white men probably do in the ends of their gardens. So I didn't like it from that perspective. But the other thing, and I don't want to talk sort of badly or poorly about the UK IPO, but the other image we've got is Wallace and Gromit, which is, of course, the one that the UK IPO has alighted on in terms of its education program and so on, which is fantastic for getting young people involved and engaged in intellectual property, but it perpetuates this sense of mad bloke inventing.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you ask kind of most people to kind of close their eyes and picture an inventor, you do think of a cartoon of an Einstein, a man who looks like Einstein, or a man kind of with his fingers, getting electrocuted or something kind of
which I have
like
to say,
that.
Gwilym increasingly looks like that, actually.
Yeah, he does actually.
It's just my conditioner's not working.
It's really interesting if you kind of Google cartoon image of an inventor, it will all be all men, and it will all also be all white men. And I kind of think that if you are someone working in STEM or not, and if you are kind of in a role that has innovation, and you kind of this picture in your head you have of an inventor, and say it's kind of like a circle, like a Venn diagram, and if you fall outside that image you have, then you just don't consider yourself as an inventor. So you're less likely to think about whether or not your ideas are patentable. You're less likely to kind of approach your supervisor and say, I think I've got an invention here. If your idea gets knocked back, you're less likely to pursue it and kind of put your time and effort into making sure it's captured, because you just don't think about it or consider it. So I think one of the most important things that we as kind of society can do is to change what that Venn diagram of an inventor looks like, change it and broaden it and expand it to include everyone, and expand it so much that anyone working in an innovation role, their Venn diagram circle, they fit within it. If you think, what's an inventor look like? An inventor looks like me. And then hopefully they'll be more able to pursue their ideas and kind of put time and effort into it. And also if for the people making the decisions, if your internal image of an inventor looks like anyone, you're more likely to go to everyone on your team. Whereas if you kind of have a specific idea of who is an inventor and who isn't, maybe you'll only knock on some doors and not on others. And one way kind of that in-house attorneys can do that is by kind of doing something I mentioned earlier, like kind of celebrating your female inventors, putting their picture in the hallway, talking about them, interviewing them if they're happy to do that, because it's all just about kind of pushing those boundaries to change what we think an inventor looks like.
Your stats are generally massively disappointing, a bit chilling, but to a large extent you think, well, that's because the world's messed up in various ways, and there's a very big hole here that we've hopefully can do things about. There's one that I've actually come across before, probably because you've educated me really well, which is that really surprising for me. The one that really caught my eye was the one about the tiny number of all female or solely female inventors and inventor teams. Where's that come from? That's so surprising to me.
Yeah,
why is it so small? Why is it so small?
I don't know, but it's really sad, isn't it? Yeah, 0.28% of patent applications have female teams on it. I guess it just shows how unlikely it is to come across an all-female team in a research department. There are fewer women. It's quite unlikely that you'll get a team of all women. I don't know how we change it. I guess just kind of by having more women in general in STEM, and by making sure that they are able to stay on to kind of senior roles. There's this idea of the leaky pipeline, kind of as you get more and more senior, the gender divide gets bigger and bigger. So we just need to take things and to do what we can to stop that leak and to steer women into leadership positions. And, whether it be by mentoring, by actively seeking out and supporting, I think that will all lead in it, and that will, having more women in senior positions should automatically lead to more all-female teams, because history shows that all female teams can be really great and like have amazing collaboration and results. So it'd be great if we could manage to get more of those in our innovative companies.
Kirsteen, is this something I'm sure Elvie is battling all of this all the time and solving problems, hopefully?
Yeah, it's definitely given me some food for thought. Just thinking about the makeup of our different project teams. I think, we do have one that's got predominantly male, and then some are more evenly split, but we definitely don't have any at the moment that are solely women. So something to think about. Yeah, I do think it stems from education in terms of making sure that people know about IP in the first place, so that they recognize when they come up with an invention. So they, I check in with everyone and make sure that I'm capturing the good inventions, but it's just prompting them for them to share the good ideas. And then, sometimes it does get taken over by the slightly more senior people in the team to kind of, in terms of the patent filing process. But again, it's just about making sure that, the people that actually did the work are recognized as part of that filing process. And then as Emily's also touched on, it's the leaky pipeline, and making sure that women are sort of enabled to, if they do choose to have a family, they're sort of supported in terms of how they come back to work, so that we do see more women pervade into the senior roles and, give younger women those aspirational roles to go after.
Which, of course, a lot of your technology is helping to do. Yay.
Indeed.
I think that Jacinda Ardern, the sadly now ex-Prime Minister of New Zealand, she went back to work. So she had a baby whilst in office. She went back to work 6 weeks after having her baby, and she credits kind of wireless breast pumps for being able to do that. So they're clearly having like a huge effect on the real world.
That's amazing. So, something I didn't know, and that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously incredible. So
Yeah.
I was just going to ask Kirsteen, if I may, it's completely the wrong end of the podcast to do this. Pretty good. How did you get to Elvie in the first place? I should have asked that about an hour ago. Did you come from Femtech to this, or has this all been a new venture for you?
No, it has been a new venture for me. So I'm a chemist by background. So I did chemistry at university. And as part of my degree, I got a year working with GSK at Dartford. It was a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, because I've always been really interested in how the world works, and how things are made and all of that stuff. So I always kind of thought manufacturing and making stuff was going to be a passion of mine. And then if you can help people, all the better. And while I was there, it was very sadly announced that the plant was shut down and has been shut down. But I got involved with the legal and the regulatory teams as part of like the technology transfer and all of that stuff. And that really exposed me to legal people who can talk the chemistry, but have this whole other world as well. And it kind of showed me that you can use your chemistry outside of a lab. So I graduated in chemistry, and then I decided I was going to do some more studying and convert to law. And so I did the classic maneuver into IP law. And so I did 7 years of pharmaceutical patent litigation before Elvie at Pinson Masons, and was really happy there. Great team of people. But then I got approached about the role at Elvie, and it was just too good to pass up. It was kind of first IP hire, the opportunity to expand out into not just patents, but trademarks, designs, the rest of it. Also the regulatory side. So I was swapping medicines for medical device regulation. So that was a nice challenge. And again, just coming back to actually making something, and that tangible product that you can hold in your hand, that you can then, I've got a friend who recently had a baby and is using one of our products, and just to hear from her the difference it's made, like that's what it's all about, really.
Well, I have to say that I have a job to do, and that's kind of bring the podcast to a close. I don't normally say I'm doing it, but I'm going to say I'm going to do it now. But you've given me a brilliant hook and a brilliant way to do it, because I have to say that if we are looking for role models, people that we can put up and say, this is what women in invention looks like, you two are amazing. So and we're going to come back to you and use you as often as we can. I've got an idea about SEPA maybe creating a new kind of go-to character for the invention world that is a kind of young female who saves the world, and we kind of build a whole narrative around this. Gwilym, we can talk about it in the pub at some point. But it also brings me back to the World IP Day in April. Normally what we do with the podcast is we get them out as quickly as we can. So we'll try and get this one out next week. But I think if you two are happy for us to do it, we'll relaunch it again in April for World IP Day. because the theme of World IP Day this year is women in invention. It's something that WIPO is really trying to put its energies into. Friend of ours, certainly of Gwilym's, Lucy Yorkson, who's at WIPO, has been leading on this work internationally for them. So and for World IP Day, we've got Bola Olabisi, who founded the Global Women Inventors and Innovators Network. So she's coming back to talk on the podcast. So I think we'll group all of that together and have a kind of like a big splash on women in IP. So we'll use this podcast twice, which is something we've never done before. So that's a new one for us. Thank you both for coming on. It's been a real pleasure having you on. Emily, I know you can talk forever, so we're going to have you back. And if Kirsteen wants to come back and join that one, she's more than welcome to as well, because you two fire off one another brilliantly. We do normally close the podcast with me doing some quirky question, but Gwilym has been champing at the bit to do them recently. Last time we did this, I did it unfairly on him by asking him to do it without priming him. I've primed him in the chat, so and he's been thinking about it. So this is a question for all of us to answer, but Gwilym's going to ask it.
I'm going to do it. Do you know, I'm going to say something first really quickly. Not only am I enjoying being on the podcast with a client, which is fantastic, but also with a partner, which is also fantastic. First time I've ever done a podcast with a bandmate.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
You're going to have to tell us more about this after.
So just big ups to our leads and backing, and I think you also played an instrument at some point.
Trumpet player.
The very
Trumpet player and sing, but not
Emily
at the same
Collins,
time.
the musician as well. It's good. I just realised that. Anyway, the question. So we talked. I mean, what you guys, Elvie, have done is you've identified ways of making people able to live their lives, which weren't being addressed and which has changed lives completely. But I just generalise that. A nice, easy question. Well, he says that because I know it's coming. But going around the screen here, can you think of an innovation that has changed your life for the better? I'll start with Emily. Give Kirsteen some good manners. Give Kirsteen the most time to think about it.
I'm sure there are obviously a lot. I think I speak a lot about mental health. You know, it's another thing that I will always fail to shut up, like never shut up about. So I think there are lots of things in that space which are really interesting. All of the like tying, I mean, to be honest, I don't personally have a smartwatch at the moment, but at one point in my life I did before I lost it. But just the innovation there that's been able to kind of tie our body and what's going on in our body with our moods and help you kind of track things. And did I sleep well? Oh, that's why I'm feeling a bit rubbish today. Knowing yourself, getting to know yourself and you like your body better so you can be a better, happier person. And there's so much innovation around that now, which is like really, really interesting. And also another thing about innovation, which as Lee referenced earlier when talking about vaginas, is that it unlocks our kind of collective ability to talk about these things. And so just talking about mental health now is so much easier than it was 5-10 years ago. And I think innovation and kind of all these new apps and trackers and everything we have on that has also really helped that conversation. So not only is it benefiting humanity with the innovation, but it's helping us to like reduce our collective stigma. So I think that has had a tangible difference on my life.
Thank you. Lovely answer, Kirsteen.
I wasn't prepped for that question.
No, well played.
Well, Emily gave an excellent answer, and my answer is not going to be quite as sophisticated, shall we say. But the gadget, or I guess innovative product that I have in my flat that I recommend to everyone and always say it's my favourite gadget I have a very tech-forward house, is my hot water tap. And because the water in London doesn't taste that great, and so to be able to get cold filtered water, boiling water straight from the tap, as well as just regular hot and cold. Plus I hate kettles because also with the lime scale water, they're just ugly. So that's going to be my answer.
I think put those two together and you've got a perfect day. Thank you, Lee.
So Kirsteen, I don't know whether you kind of know my background or whatever, but you've segued into mine brilliantly. So I'm on my 21st career or something mad like that. But I started off life as a plumber in Portsmouth, and I just happened to have the thing that I'm going to talk about on my piano over there, bizarrely. So Gwilym, it's the pipe slice, which was once
channel.
was once a trademark, but now has become genericized. So when we used to cut pipes, us plumbers, we would either use a hacksaw, which is what I learnt with, cutting in a straight line. Then they invented the pipe cutter, the tube cutter, which was it's like a small cutting wheel captured in a much larger device that you wound up and turned around. But cutting pipes in situ was almost impossible until someone came up with the pipe slice, which is that same cutting wheel, but captured in a much smaller device that just turns around on itself like that. So you just clip it over the pipe, you turn it so you can cut a pipe under a bath or under a sink, and it transformed our lives. So the pipe slice.
Thank you, Lee. Available from all major retailers. That was actually a little bit more specialist. Yeah, well, I've had ages to think about it. I was actually thinking all kind of modern stuff. I suddenly realised the thing that made my life better is my bicycle, which was an innovation back a bit. And then actually, let's break that down. The wheel. Well done, guys. Honestly.
And there we covered the full spectrum of innovation and just show how it touches all aspects of life.
And there's a wheel in my pipe slice.
It all fits together beautifully. Oh, God, what a silly answer. Anyway, Lee, go on, close us down.
Thank you both for being on. It's been a magical combination of whizzy tech, a brilliant IP story, and a laugh. And I don't think we can want more than that on the podcast. The fact that we're an hour in and we're still going is a testimony to how much we've been enjoying it. The fact that we'd love to have you back, also the same. So just thank you both for coming on. It's been absolutely.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.